Okay. Okay, here we are. We are live. Let me just check with everyone. Hey everyone, welcome to this new VirtualMuleys 4th edition. Can someone confirm on chat that they can hear me well and everything looks good on their side? Hey Raja, Ishwar, anybody can acknowledge that they can hear me well? Okay, so looks like Derek says yes. Hey Derek, hey Raja, thanks. Thanks for confirming. Okay, all right guys, so let's start on it. So for today's topic, we have Anypoint Visualizer. We will see that in action, and to go over that, we have Amit Shah from MuleSoft. Without saying like so many things from my side, I will let Amit speak and introduce himself and start on this one. So at any point, you will see YouTube chat on your right hand side, so feel free to drop your questions there, and once like presentation is progressing and it's towards the end, we will go through all the questions, and again after the presentation we will have time for question answers that you may have for us. Okay, so with this, Amit, it's up to you. You can start.
Thank you, Manik. So, hello everyone. This is a new experience for me. So, right now I'm just talking, seeing my screen. So, do pardon me if you face any issues from my end. So, to start off, let me introduce myself. So, my name is Amit Jha. I am a program architect with MuleSoft. I work out of New York office in US, and I have wide range of experience working with various integration tools, including IBM, TIBCO, and MuleSoft. Um, and I've worked across all kind of industries. Uh, let's get started. So that we are going to see today how Anypoint Visualizer works, and probably if we get some time, I would like to show you a live demo as well for customers where we have implemented Anypoint Visualizer. So let's get started. Probably everybody has seen this, right? So API-led connectivity approach. So we have tried to do this at all of the customers that we can, but few things have changed in last couple of years. So as and when we are doing more and more of API-led connectivity approach, we are seeing more and more challenges. So let's look into that and let's see how can we solve it. So uh, this is how you typically start with an API approach, right? You could try to create APIs at your system layer, at your process layer and experience layer. And as and when you add more and more consumers, your API will grow. So over time, it becomes a challenge for any customers to manage those APIs. And this is the new picture that any customer will see when they have started creating these APIs over a period of time. So a study shows there are right now any customers on an average have 35 different technology or components that they are integrating with. So as and when you have built these many APIs, it's a challenge for our customers to manage those APIs. So say if you're doing a web transaction and then you are picking up a product information, it's very hard for a customer to see that how the transaction is flowing through inside that network. So as and when the network becomes big, the more challenge is on managing all of those APIs and then to trace how the data is flowing through across these APIs. So that creates a gap in observation of from the customer perspective. It increases the time to find an issue. So if something goes wrong in any of these APIs, it's very hard to just look at the logs and to figure out what's the problem is, what is the bottleneck for the application network that has been created. It creates poor customer experience because if you take more time to resolve this issue, again, the customers will not be happy. and in the end, it causes loss of revenue. So we don't want that. So what has happened is some customers have tried to create their own custom applications that can monitor across those APIs, but it's not always what they want, and sometimes that monitoring itself becomes complex. So what MuleSoft did was that since we have access to all of those APIs and the data that flows through them, MuleSoft planned on creating their own component that can allow all the customers to have a better visibility across their application network. So Endpoint Visualizer automatically organizes APIs across various categories, and then it uses Mule runtime to give you a visual aspects of your API, so you can find the relation between your various APIs using Endpoint Visualizer. This allows you to have a better monitoring and governance over your APIs. So that's what is Endpoint Visualizer, and that kind of the importance that it brings to an IT team. But before you go ahead and install it, you have to keep few things in mind. So for a few of the customers who have been in the MuleSoft journey for a long period of time, probably Endpoint Visualizer was not enabled from day one. Right? So in those cases, if you don't see Endpoint Visualizer, then reach out to your customer success manager or MuleSoft support team to ask you to give access to Endpoint Visualizer. It comes with if you have, I think, Platinum license, it comes along with it. So you don't have to pay anything additional for Endpoint Visualizer, but you do have to configure a few things before you can get started. The other things that is required is Endpoint Visualizer behind the scene uses a file bit infrastructure and like ELK for showing that kind of dashboards. So you do have to whitelist a few of those hosts and ports. So I've listed it down here, but it's also provided in the documentation. So you make sure that from the server where you have your runtime running, this hosts and IP addresses ports, they have enabled access to that, right? So in particular, I've seen challenges with 5044 port, which is a specific file bit port, which is being used. So most of the times we see 443 is enabled, but 5044 is not. So in case you face an issue even after you have installed Endpoint monitoring services in your runtime, I've seen challenges are mostly around 5044, that port is not enabled. So if you have your monitoring agent running, but still you don't see anything in the visualizer, the culprit probably is that 5044 port. On top of it, to be able to see your Endpoint Visualizer, you should have access to your Endpoint monitoring section of platform to make sure that the person who is trying to see is part of Endpoint monitoring user group. So add that person into that group before they can see anything in the visualizer. So these are the things before even you start installation. Endpoint Visualizer behind the scene uses endpoint monitoring infrastructure. So in case of Cloud Hub, is just you have to just enable it. There are specific runtimes which is being supported. But in case of on-prem, you do have to follow a few steps which are listed in the platform. So you make sure that if you are using an on-prem server, then these are the operating systems that have currently being tested with endpoint monitoring, and they work. So make sure that a client is using any of these operating systems. In the supported versions of Mule runtime, it is mostly 3.8.7 upwards. I don't have 4.2 here. 4.2 is pretty recent, so I will update this slide to include 4.2 as well. So it's supported from 3.8.7 onwards till 4.2. And then you have to have a Mule runtime manager version also, which is compatible with endpoint monitoring. So these are the versions that currently supports endpoint visualizer. Moving forward, So this is how you access an endpoint visualizer. So you log into an endpoint platform, and then you click on endpoint visualizer, and this is how it looks like. So uh, as you can see, there are different layers that you can divide your APIs into, and that allows you to follow your even API-led approach and then the categories that you have for your APIs. You can see this. You can use Endpoint Visualizer to check who is calling which of those APIs. So once you click on those APIs, you can see who is making the call. So right now, product is being called by both from a process API layer, and in some cases, experience API is directly calling the system APIs as well. So this also gives you an idea of finding a relationship between various APIs. This is also being used by some of the customers to find the unused APIs. So like in this case, when you see order process production sync, probably there's no consumer right now. So we have built an API, but nobody is using it. So that allows an IT manager to find out what is the reason, or have a built an API which currently is not being used. Even this will help you with decommissioning an API, or even probably versioning later on. Once you click on an API, it always also allows you to look at the CPU utilization and the memory usage. So like I said, Visualizer is linked with endpoint monitoring. So it pulls all those data from the monitoring. So when you click on an API, you can also have a look at different kind of analytics associated with those APIs. So if some API is using more CPU or memory, you can find the culprit, and then you can try to find a resolution for it, or what's the reason for using that much of memory or CPU. Going forward, if you want to say find out from a particular experience API which system APIs you're using, you can also collapse different APIs, and then you can just because over time even this view becomes a big, because you have a lot of APIs interacting with each other. So you can collapse a few of those APIs to find relationship between some specific APIs that you have. So Visualizer allows you to do that as well. Now, it may happen that sometimes somebody probably has by mistake tagged wrong APIs. So you can change that as well from the visualizer. So if somebody has wrongly, or developer has wrongly mentioned an API as an experience API, but probably it's just a process API, so you can change those tags here. So you can reorganize your APIs. Let's see if we can go through a live demo right now. So So say this is a API that we have created for one of the customers. So I'm right now showing you the production view. Here you can choose like what kind of environment that you want to see all those APIs. And you can see from sandbox or production, you can see so many APIs are right now listed, right? And this also shows you the average response time for a few of those APIs. And then you can also look at different kind of views. So you can filter based on the average CPU utilization. You can filter based on the failures. So you can do all those kind of analytics from here. So let me go back to my production view, which is much more simpler right now. So this will show you all the kind of interaction. So you can categorize if there's any external traffic. You can also try to find out if you have how many inbound connections for each of those APIs. So all of those informations are also available here. Okay, let me move back. So that's it mostly. Manik, we can go through the questions that we have on the chat. So let me just stop my screen sharing and then move to the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Amit. I think
Yep.
that was great. So far, nothing on the chat. So everyone, how was it? Any questions? Feel free to drop them on chat, and we'll be happy to take all those questions in there. So Amit, like until we have questions from there, right?
Sure.
So when we deploy any new application, so let's
Yep.
say I deploy my new system API on
Yep.
my runtime,
Yep.
does it show up automatically on my visualizer, or
Yes, it
do
would
I
be.
have to like configure something?
No, you don't have to configure anything. So as long as, so only thing that you need to configure is there are a few for those visualizer tags like
Mm-hmm.
experience process or system APIs. There are there's a specific property that you have to tag it with. So if you're not doing it, you can still go into visualizer and then you can choose for that API. But if you want to do it, like you want to be say proactive about it, so you need to set up a property as part of your runtime deployment for that specific API that will tell you which kind of API is that. Based on that, it will put it in the right bracket when you look at the visualizer. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
good. So,
yeah, but
so
beyond it, nothing else. So you just deploy the API, it will pick it up. It already knows there's an agent that runs behind the scene,
mhm.
and that agent knows whenever you deploy a new API, it will just start showing it you into the visualizer.
Oh, that's cool. And I think you said as a part of deployment, so I can also include that as a part of my pipelines and whatever
Yes,
way I use
yes,
to
yes,
deploy my
yes. Of course,
applications.
of course, of course. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. So when usually those system APIs interact with my process APIs and all those communication that is happening, so every communication that visualizer picks up, I have a do I have an opportunity to drill down that, and if anything fails, anything goes wrong with
Yes,
it, so does
yes.
it give me that thing?
Yes, it does. So, like, there are various views that are available. So, right now, say you have facing a production issue, so you can go to
Hmm.
the failures view and you can actually see that which of the APIs are currently causing issues. And then probably, say if you are familiar with your process APIs, then you know what the process API is interacting with. So, say my process API is interacting with three different system APIs. So, Visualizer will let you know from the system APIs who is the culprit.
Okay,
And then
okay.
probably, so what you will not be able to do right now is not tagged to the log file, so you'll not be able to see the actual error, but you will know the culprit. So and then you can go back looking at a system API logs to see what is the cause of the problem. So that's where probably you cannot just click on the API and the log file will open in front of you, but it will
Mhm.
tell you which API has the issues, and you can go back and then look at that API log to for any kind of specific uh, issue that is happening there, and then try to resolve it.
Okay, that's good. So I think on chat, Crazy
Yeah,
Fox. Hey, Crazy
crazy
Fox.
box.
It's,
So,
it's, a, it's a nice name. I really like that. So what do you think? Like, how do you share these visualizers or the views that you create among the teams or colleagues and in my organization? How do you share all those things?
right. So you have that group specifically called Anypoint Monitoring User. So that's a role defined in Anypoint platform. So as long as you add your colleague to your Anypoint Monitoring User role, they will be able to see your visualizer.
Oh, that's cool. So it's just an addition of one role, and I think the way you would do that is typically you will go in the access management in your platform, choose the
Yes.
user, and assign any point monitoring
Monitoring
role
user
to.
role to there. Yes.
Okay, so that's easy to just share all of
That's
that.
easy. Yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
easy. And then probably you can just give somebody just access to that view,
Hmm.
because say if there is a and a lot of my clients also business owners comes to us and then they want to have a look at it. So probably they will not be interested in like runtime manager or design center. So just create an ID, and if you have SSO enabled in your organization, uh, pretty good. You can create a group yourself within your LDAP or Active Directory, whatever you're using behind the scene, and then you can map this endpoint monitoring user to that AD group, and that way
Mhm.
they will be able to access to endpoint platform, and then can go to Visualizer and have a look at it.
Okay, it's like a more of a management kind of view
True, true,
to
true.
like non-technical people who just
Yes,
want to see what is happening in their organization.
yes, yes, and
Yeah,
it's a kind
that's
of a dashboard, right? So
yeah.
it's a good dashboard. If you so it's a good interactive dashboard
Right.
that they can drill into. So I'm not sure if people. I'm like actually I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Tableau. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's what you do, right? You
yeah,
get all the analytics data, and then you want to create a dashboard. The advantage now is that you can create those dashboards from MuleSoft out of the box rather than
yeah.
using a third party tool.
That's nice. So for Nerdy's question, right?
Hmm.
Um, the very first step to set up all those visualizers, definitely the first one will be to install visualizer itself or set up visualizer, right?
Yes, yes. So Visualizer behind the scene uses endpoint monitoring. So this is called, so right now, most of people have heard about runtime manager agent. There's a similar agent called endpoint monitoring agent.
Hmm.
So let me see if I can share my screen again and I can
Sure,
show it to you live. So
sure.
give me a second. So let me just share my screen and then I can show it to you where to get that from. So,
Okay.
Manik, just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I think it's coming up. Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay. So it's when you go to Visualizer specifically, and once it is enabled for your org, uh, sorry, you have to go to monitoring actually. So for Visualizer, all the data comes from monitoring. So you have to go to endpoint monitoring, and here, if you go to settings, it will show you the steps. So see this. You can
So,
download the zip file and tell you that go to the AM folder. Uh, so you need to log into your runtime server and then unzip this file, and there are the steps. So all the steps are mentioned here. The only thing is, even after you run the steps, if you are still not able to see it in the visualizer, uh, 90% of the times the culprit is that 5404 port, which is being used by the FileBeat server behind the scene. So if that port is not open, that is why you will not be able to see, because the data is created on your on-prem server, but it's not reaching out to Mule
mhm.
Cloud, and that's why the dashboard is not being shown. So the steps are mentioned here. There's a documentation link that you can go through. Uh, and for Cloud Hub is easy enough. So right now for this customer, I'm not using Cloud Hub, but yeah,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
using it with runtimes, uh, Cloud Hub, you can just enable it, the monitoring. So it's pretty easy to set up.
that's nice. So, and I think for the next question from Solomon, the video that you just showed, the steps, that is what you would do if, let's say, you are running your hybrid runtime on a Mac operating system. It's just like I have my Anypoint platform account and I'm running runtime on my Mac system. So I would just follow the steps that you just
Yes.
showed on that
Yes.
hybrid section, because hybrid is nothing but, I think, you are running runtime on your own infrastructure, on
True.
your own hard, right?
True. True. I would just say one thing: if somebody
Mhm.
wants to do it on a personal front, I'm not sure if they will be able to look at Visualizer, because visualizers are mostly enabled for the corporate clients. So probably I can look it up, like if it's available or not. But uh, the chances are that you may not be able to see Visualizer if you are using it for your personal
Okay.
purpose.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's nice. I think
uh,
that gives pretty much information. Where once you have access to it, like definitely having access is one part, and but once you have
yes,
access, it is pretty much self-explained there, where you can just go
yes,
and see how you want to set up and what all things you need to do from it.
true. So for you, Solomon, if you are able to see Visualizer, if you have access to it, it doesn't matter. You want to set it up Mac, just follow the steps. It's the same steps that we saw there. And Yeah, same corresponding steps are there for Windows as well. So yeah.
That's nice. So I remember when you were saying about troubleshooting in there, it shows you which API is probably giving you trouble. Is
Yep.
there a way from API visualizer you can go directly into runtime manager? Does it create that bridge? Like I click on the
No,
API
no,
in my
it's not
visualizer
available
and
right
it
now.
takes.
Not right now, not right now. But I
Okay,
can take it as one of the suggestions, and probably when we have meeting with the product team, I can reach out to them. I can let
right.
them know. But yes, so the challenge for that, just to give you a different perspective, Manik, is
Mhm.
right now, if people familiar with on-prem installations do know that logs are not visible in any point platform
Right. Yeah.
on-prem, right? So again, if this happens, it's probably be only for Cloud Hub subscription or subscribers, but not from on-prem. So probably they need enough incentive, the support team, to make it enable for both of them. So
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. Because so if I'm troubleshooting and if I know this is the API that is causing me, it will be helpful to jump from visualizer into
I agree.
runtime
I
manager
agree.
and look at
I
it.
agree. I agree.
But I think it will work for the cloud hub,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah.
It's just a link. So as long as there's
Right.
a link, and then you can go to that logs, probably,
Yeah.
yeah. But I've not seen it happen till now. So probably in future
Yeah.
they will be able to.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
nice.
So Neetu has a question. So if you set up Visualizer in Cloud Hub, does it use memory or CPU and slow app processes? To some extent, Neetu, yes. I will not say it does not. There is a performance impact. So you probably have to be a little bit careful. But I would say the advantages that you get with Visualizer still trumps that little bit of slowness that your app can get. So because behind the scene, it does try to get a lot of data that will allow you to it to show you all those kind of analytics. So
Hmm.
that does uses some of the memory and CPU behind the scene. So there will be some lag when you enable Visualizer, but yeah, there is an article as well available. Uh, Let me see if I can put it on the YouTube, and then probably you
Yeah.
guys can go through that.
Right. I think that will be helpful if you put chat in there. But generally, the visualizer agent is gonna run on the same server instance, right?
Yes,
If
yes.
I'm using the hybrid, the agent will run there, and agent will. I don't think it. I mean, I don't know how much resources it will consume, but if it has to run, it will require something.
True, true.
Yeah.
It's not that much, but you're
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
I will not say, and I will not lie saying that no, it has no impact.
Hmm.
Uh, but I will still say that the advantages that you get from it trumps any kind of slowness that may happen.
Okay. So is there so with that said, is there any like a suggestion or recommendation for what applications you should put there, or how many applications you should put on a visualizer, or it doesn't matter how many applications you run? So for example, in your one of the screenshot in the sandbox, I believe there were like tens of APIs
Yes.
were running.
True, true. So I have not seen any kind of performance impact till now for my applications.
Okay.
So okay, uh, let me do this. Manik, I'm putting in the chat between us,
Hmm.
and you can put it
Okay.
in the YouTube. So I have to log in for putting in the YouTube. So if you can
No,
just
that's
put
fine. Yeah,
this link
drop
in
it
the
there,
YouTube.
and I'll.
Yes.
Thanks.
So yeah, so I'm not aware of any limit right now. I was just looking at the documentation that says expected CPU utilization impact is 3 to 5%. So even it's not that much. I've not seen most of the clients use more than 15 to 20% CPUs on a regular basis. But yes, what you can do is, again, if you have some critical APIs, then probably you enable the monitoring for them, and probably something like a batch process that don't need monitoring, you can
Hmm.
disable it. So there are ways to like do a selective monitoring as well. If you're on Cloud Hub,
Okay.
for on-prem, there's still a challenge. Is everything or nothing. So
Right.
uh, you have to be a little bit aware about those challenges when you're
Yeah.
doing it on-prem. So,
Right.
yep.
For Raja's question, is there a way to see only error logs? Um, uh, I'm guessing it. By that you mean like if just to find out APIs that are in error right now on the visualizer. Is that correct? If not,
Yes, yes. So Raja, what you can see is Vue will give you the APIs that are throwing error right now. But if you go to specifically error logs, then it's easy to do in the Cloud Hub, because in Cloud Hub you can do that kind of search that specifically looks for any kind of error in the log. If not, it's basically how you have designed your error handling, right? So uh, there's no single way of doing it. You probably have to. It depends if you're doing an error logging into a file or in a database. If you're doing database, you probably can have your queries run against your database and only get the error uh, transactions from the database. If you're doing it on the file, probably you still have to run some kind of search on your file to find it out. This Anypoint Visualizer is mostly integrated with the Anypoint monitoring, so you get all kind of monitoring information to see in the dashboard. It's not much of it in the from the log perspective. It does look at the kind of uh, responses each of these APIs are
mhm.
giving to come up with that kind of view, but it doesn't actually dig into that much into your logs to come up with any kind of uh, error log information that is there. So you still have to go into the log and then look at the errors. So
So that said, since it is looking at runtime interactions between the APIs, do you think it will tell us if APIs are returning 40400 or 404s or
yeah,
any error statuses? Will it show that, oh, this API is returning so many error statuses?
that you can look at from the monitoring perspective.
Okay.
Probably you have to dig into monitoring in more details, and then
Mhm.
monitoring will show you that it can show you which error, how many errors, and all those things. So
Oh, that's good.
that was more of a monitoring dashboard that can show you. Visualizer still has a high level view, right? So
Okay.
it actually shows you the connectivity between your APIs and all those aspects. But you have to go into monitoring, and monitoring will show you those details what you are looking for. That what kind of error has happened, how many errors have happened over uh, hour or over days. So
Right.
that's information available in the monitoring.
Right. Uh, so, based on what Solomon is saying, CentOS Linux, is that true? Like, that is the only supported OS for any point monitoring?
CentOS, Linux, Ubuntu, Windows. Yeah.
Right?
So Solomon, if you're looking for any kind of specific OS, can you
Mac
yeah?
OS, I think he was asking for Mac OS.
Oh, Mac is there. Mac is supported.
Okay, I think it's not on the dock.
Oh, okay. The Mac is based on of Linux. So when you say supported for this OSs, MuleSoft has the run extensive tests and confirm, right? So Mac behind the scene uses the same kind of infrastructure as Linux, right? So you will not have a challenge as long as so runtime manager also, right? So you can run it on Mac. Uh, what is it, Solomon? By this, what MuleSoft normally means is nobody has a Mule runtime standalone server running on Mac, right? So they will either go with CentOS, Linux, Ubuntu, or Windows. So those are the operating systems where you will be having your standalone Mule runtime servers. So that's why those servers are listed. But if you want to test with Mac, obviously you can.
Okay, that's uh, yeah, that's an interesting question from Ishwar. We do have alerts separately. Yeah, alert as a
Yes.
module in there, right? So
Yes.
how does
Yes.
that integrate with Visualizer, or it doesn't?
It does to some extent. So if you ask me, when you're setting up an alerts, it's mostly as part of the monitoring or as part of your Mule runtime. So alert mostly goes to those two sections, and like Visualizer requires monitoring infrastructure behind the scene, right? So uh, in that case, you probably already have monitoring alerts set up for those APIs. So and that would do your purpose. So I don't see a reason for having specific alerts that you can put in the visualizer if monitoring is doing the same thing for you. So
Okay, so yeah, probably that is then will be covered by everything that you put around your runtime manager, runtime instance,
Yes.
or like what is happening with my memory, what is happening with my CPU. So that
Yes.
will cover your resource level alerts.
Yes. Yes. So uh, once you have already set up the alert there, it's no reason for you to have one more alert section in Visualizer as well, because monitoring will be setting up those alerts and sending you proper alerts at any point of time, right? So yeah.
Mhm. So the next one for Raja's question is, so alerts memory storage fine, but for connectivity issues or error,
Okay.
do you mean, Raja, like between system API and process API, if two APIs lose connection between them, does visualizer show that, or are there any alerts? Sorry, visualizer shows that, but are there any way to put alerts on it? What do you think of it? Like, is there a way?
So what I would say, Manik, would be if you have to set up an alert in between
Mhm,
your APIs, it's mostly to do with your error handling strategy. So say if you have an error calling even an outbound APIs, right? So if you're calling, say, Salesforce, or you're calling or making a call to an Oracle database, and for some reason that is down. So normally what you would do as a developer is you will be catching those errors, and either you will be throwing it out to your calling application. In the meantime, you can also set up some kind of common infra or common APIs that can send notification to a support team, right? So uh, it's mostly a business decision when you are building this APIs, that do they want to this alerts to be sent out for to a particular group of people who can look at it and then work upon it. And the same kind of alerts can also be set up in your runtime manager for any kind of errors that may happen from the connectivity perspective. So what you need from that perspective is you have to generate, and probably I'm going into a little bit more detail.
mhm,
I am not particularly aware of the group of people I'm interacting with, uh, but just giving you a perspective that you do have some kind of events that you can create from the MuleSoft code, and based on that event, you can set up the alerts. So that will allow you to turn on and off those alerts based upon if you want to set up an alert probably on a particular specific period of time, say
mhm,
when the transaction volume is high, right? So if you have that kind of events emitting from your application, you can catch those events from your Mule runtime uh, alerts, okay, and then you can send a notification to people based on those alerts. So that can be done with just a kind of a design approach. uh, Specifically from visualizer perspective, uh, no, that's not something that visualizer does, because like I said, it doesn't dig into the
yeah,
code into that level to do that. But monitoring and any point runtime manager are
mhm,
the best places to send that kind of alert if any system APIs you're not able to call from process API. So the system API is down. On top of it, you are probably uh, developers are already aware that you can set up alerts if your API goes down for any reason,
mhm.
or if server goes down, if your CPU usage is beyond a certain limit. All those alerts can be set up from your runtime manager. So you don't even need to go to visualizer for those.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah, thanks. Uh, those were very nice questions, guys. Just let them keep coming. If you still have questions, drop them on chat, and we can take on those. So while we are waiting on those, Amit, what type of applications you have usually seen on Visualizer? Are those just the APIs, or any other type of applications can also go? on those?
That's a good question. That's a very good question because people keep asking me, can I put a scheduler application into the
Mm-hmm.
visualizer? Yes, you can. Like if you want to, like a scheduler, uh, it it doesn't come into any of those brackets. Well, it's a debatable concept, and I
Mm-hmm.
keep debating with my colleagues that where does scheduler fall? So if I create an API, if I create an application, like legally I can't even call it an API if I'm
Yeah,
creating
it's not.
it's an application. So
Yeah,
if I create a scheduler application, which layer is it? Is it an experience API? Is it a system APIs? Or is it even a process API? Because
yeah.
even your scheduler application can do some kind of orchestration. So uh, you can create your custom tags in the visualizer, and probably you can just tag your application saying that this is a kind of a scheduler, but it does talk to various other systems as well. So I've seen few of the designs where even when people create batch processes, they do call system APIs behind the scene. So you can see those kind of interactions in the
Mm-hmm.
visualizer if you want to. And even beyond experience APIs, you have a layer to show consumers and you have a layer to show providers. So that gives you the whole view. So it's like a picture perfect view that you're looking at API-led connectivity, where
Yeah,
you have all the layers, and on top of it, you have the consumers and the providers as well.
right.
So that's what Visualize is trying to achieve.
So I think that in that case, if I have those type of standalone application, let's say an application which pulls data from Salesforce and puts that into database or somewhere, so I can still put that application, but it won't fit in any of my graph. Like it won't show me the communication pattern.
Yes, probably it will just show you which layer it belongs to, unless you are using one of the APIs to interact with. So, say if
Mhm.
you have even if you created a batch process, but you are using your reusable APIs to call Salesforce. So, say you are doing a data synchronization between an Oracle database and Salesforce. So, you have
Mhm.
every night you go to Oracle database, you fetch the data. Now you have to insert into Salesforce. But instead of calling Salesforce directly, uh, you using a connector, you are actually calling an API. Okay, so that
Okay.
Salesforce upsert or Salesforce update operation that you're running, you're calling an API, a
Mhm.
system APIs for that. So if you have that kind of interaction, it will still show up in the visualizer
Okay.
because you have an inter API communication that is happening. But
Yeah.
in cases where you are just using that API and then you're using a Salesforce connector, in that case, what you will see is that that API, that application, which is your batch process, is calling a Salesforce connector. Because in Visualizer view, you also see the connectors there. So
Oh.
you will see the interaction with the connector, but again, you're not interacting with any APIs. So you're interacting directly with your backend application.
Oh, but that is interesting. So even if I have an application and if it is showing me what type of connectors I am using in that,
Yes, yes.
so does it show all type of connectors or is
No,
there a
no,
preset
not
of
all,
like?
all of them. Not all of them. So there's the team is still working on showing all types of connectors, but right now, if you go to the documentation of Visualize, you will see. But
Mhm.
you have, I think, MQ is there, web services are there, Salesforce is there. So all of those are supported, and it's documented in the MuleSoft side which kind of connectors right now you can see. But team is working on enabling for most of the connectors.
Okay, so that puts then probably applications into three different sets. One is APIs, one is applications, non-APIs, but applications with supported connectors, because those will show a little more information than a standalone application, but
Yes,
less information than system API
true,
or basically APIs.
true, true.
Okay, that's actually also a helpful view to
Yep,
see how it goes.
yep. Okay, so I
So
got one more question from Crazy Fox. So, can
yeah.
we use any cron job operation? Is it possible for notification purposes? Yes, you can. But then you have to look at from the cron job perspective what the cron job is. What is the input to the job, right? So, is cron job supposed to look at the log file and based on that, creating any notification? Yeah, like once you have created a log file, an API can read that log file and obviously send a notification on top of it. So you can obviously create that kind of APIs, and that's one of the approaches that you can use. So of course you can do that.
Right. So usually I have seen various applications within MuleSoft has its own APIs, right? Like for example, Monitoring Center has API, or for ARM has API, or Cloud Hub has
Yes.
APIs. So does Visualizer have its own APIs, which we can use outside of Visualizer to do
Not right now.
some
Not right
automation
now.
during?
Not right now.
It's not right. Okay. Yeah.
Even have to look at any point monitoring. Does it have its APIs or not?
Mhm.
Probably it also does not. So
Yeah, probably not monitoring, but I know like ARM has, Cloud
ARM
Hub
has it.
has, so those usually all deployment platform or
Yes.
resource related stuff has
More
APIs
to do
around
with
it.
the CI/CD. You're absolutely right. So it's more
Yeah,
to do with CI/CD
exactly. Like, that's what I
using
was
this
going towards. Like
automation.
if I
Yeah.
have to do something during my CI/CD and do some update or any change on Visualizer, but probably apart from just tagging my deployment, which already you said we can do. Like when I'm deploying, I can tag my application. I don't see anything else is required in there.
Yes, and behind the scene, a lot of customers we interact with have their own monitoring tools as such. So the
Yeah,
log files can be used by multiple monitoring agents, right? And they can
right.
use it in their dashboard. So Splunk is quite popular. A lot of customers use Splunk. A lot of customers use Splunk along with Visualizer. So Visualizer gives them the initial view, and then Splunk gives them a more detailed view. So that's also there. Uh, so it's a preference, right?
Yeah,
It's a
right.
preference of a customer that what they want to use. Challenge was that this is something that MuleSoft gives you now out of the box.
Yeah,
So if a customer initially when they hop into MuleSoft platform, uh, they will not face the challenge. They will not get blinded as and when their API uh, uh, economy increases, right? So this lets them track their APIs in real time. So
yeah. I mean, it definitely, I think, gives good landscape of all your APIs and applications running within your environment or infrastructure, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that was. Yeah, I think we are 2 minutes over time. Are there any still questions floating in your minds, guys? Drop. Probably we can check some last a minute or two to see if there are any pending questions. So that was really good demonstration, Amit, to see Visualizer in action, to see different views of it, what type of information you see on there, or like it's not just APIs that you can put. The interesting part is non-API applications which
Yes.
interact with various connectors, supported connectors. That is interesting part where you can put those supporting connectors and see the interaction. So just looking at, I don't have to look inside the application to see what connectors are being used. Probably Visualizer can tell me you
True.
are sending data to
Yeah. Yep.
Salesforce or database or something like that.
Yep.
That is interesting. Yeah. Cool. So I think I don't think we have any more questions on there. So thank you very much, guys, for joining. Thank you very much, Amit. Oh, last one sneaked in. Yeah. May I expect any bot connector or for future
Yes.
updates
Yes,
from
KJ
you?
Fox, you can. That's something that we are trying to look into. So that being said, a lot of right now the connectors, the bots that are being created to support REST as well. So in cases somebody creates a bot that supports REST, Mule does work with those. But from the specific, and I do understand, like the experience is different. You can call
Mm.
Salesforce through a connector, and you can call Salesforce through their SOAP or REST APIs as well. But there's a
Mm.
different experience to it. The connectors does gives you a standard way of calling an application. So I do understand why you are looking for a connector. Uh, so it all depends on the kind of need we see from the customers. And you guys all have been amazing ambassador for MuleSoft. So a lot of the connectors that
Yeah.
we have right now are created by various developers and various partners that work, and we look at it at all the time. And then it's how the connectors are so good that we approved it. We make sure that they get enough uh, uh, I'd say visibility from the other customers.
Yeah.
So that's there. Any point uh, like MuleSoft has the framework for creating the custom connectors. So I would
Yeah.
encourage anyone here who wants to create their connector, and they can publish it into Exchange. And if they want MuleSoft to have a look at it, we can, and probably those connectors can become, because I think now they're putting at MuleSoft
Yeah.
certificate or something. They are using a kind of a tag or certification, same as like if you guys are familiar with Amazon. Amazon say that this is Amazon, I think, uh, preferred or something, right? They use a tag,
Yeah, I forgot
product,
that one.
which are not made
Yeah.
by Amazon, but different other vendors as well, right?
Yeah.
Amazon Choice, yeah, that's the
Right.
term.
It's the same way.
So same is being done by MuleSoft as well. There are a few connectors that are being created by partners and the developers,
Yeah.
and we say that we are certified and this looks good, and go ahead and use it.
It's
So
an easy way to share.
yes,
That's nice.
yes,
Yeah. That's
but
cool.
yeah, we are looking at it. Any of those popular ones, and if the customer comes back to us and we see enough demand uh, for those bots in the market,
Hmm.
yep, we will create the connectors for them.
Yeah. Thanks. That's nice. Alrighties. So thank you very much, everyone. I think we are over time, and I don't see any more questions. So yeah, thanks, Amit, for this
Let me do
presentation.
one
It
more
was
thing.
yeah,
Let me send my LinkedIn profile, and probably you can put in here in
yeah,
the
yeah.
YouTube. And then
If
if somebody wants to reach out to me, like they can reach out to me with LinkedIn,
sure,
and I will try to
if you drop me there, I
uh,
can drop. Okay, so I hope for everyone else this was a very helpful session. We will continue with. I mean, it's not gonna end right now. So if you have any offline questions, there are various ways that you can ask questions on our platform. So you can send it on the forum, which is the best place. Like if you put that on the forum, there are hundreds of hands, brains, everything
yeah.
working for each other, right? So it's a good community. So feel free to add questions in there or the other channels. And if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to even probably Amit on this LinkedIn. And I pasted that, and YouTube is saying me I should not post links. Probably it will take a while, but I'll make sure it stays on the chat in there. Let me update. Okay. Uh, I'll send you because it keeps saying me that error posting this link.
Yeah, I think
Ah,
some people use that trick, that they remove that host name and
yeah. So I'll just put it simply this one. LinkedIn handle is even the handle should be fine.
yeah.
Yeah, the handle went in. For some reason, it wasn't allowing me to put the whole LinkedIn link, so I just put the handle. With the handle, it's easy to go on the LinkedIn. Right? All right. So thank you very much, Amit. Thank you everyone for joining in tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again in the next session with uh, some other interesting topic and great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening. See you later. Bye bye.